Now on BBC One, the 6 o'clock news with Hugh Edwards in Dublin and George Alagaya in the studio.
Today at 6, we're in Dublin on the opening day of the Queen's historic visit to Ireland. An official welcome for the first British monarch to visit the Republic since its creation almost 90 years ago. A powerful symbol of reconciliation after a long, turbulent history as the Queen lays a wreath to remember those who fought for Irish independence. On the streets of Dublin, there are some who resent the Queen's presence, but most Irish people seem to welcome the royal visit.
This is a day we're making history and it's nice to be part of it.
The Queen is welcome, heads of state are welcome. Everybody is welcome.
Also tonight, inflation jumps to its highest level for 2.5 years. Higher transport fares push up the cost of living. Inflation hits 4.5%, squeezing the family budget.
What happens is you're continually juggling, you know, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, or I'm late paying bills now, which I never used to be.
Millie Dowler's mother collapses in court as she describes how her daughter's death took her to the brink of insanity. One man and his dog, pictures of a remarkable helicopter rescue after they fell 200 feet off a cliff.
In the southwest, tributes to a Plymouth-based Royal Marine killed in Afghanistan. Dean Meade's family talk of their loss. And hundreds of jobs promised with a new multi-million-pound mining venture planned for Devon.
A very good evening from Dublin Castle on the first day of the Queen's visit to Ireland. Indeed, it's the first ever visit by a British monarch to the Irish Republic, a fact which underlines the turbulent relationship between the two states over so many years. The moment of greatest symbolic power came this afternoon when the Queen laid a wreath at the Garden of Remembrance in Parnell Square, the place where those who fought for Irish independence are honoured. The Queen arrived at around midday among the tightest security possible after a bomb was discovered overnight on a bus bound for Dublin. Well, first this evening, our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports on the events of this historic visit so far.
It is just an hour's flying time from London, and yet this particular flight has taken decades to get here. In the 60th year of her reign, and wearing a coat of emerald green, Queen Elizabeth of Britain was finally able to step onto the soil of Britain's nearest neighbour, Ireland. It looked as so many other state visits have looked, with the honour guard and the dignitaries. Yet here was a moment of history. A visit which signifies the end to centuries of enmity and suspicion, and which, it is hoped, introduces something new and better. The Queen was brought into a Dublin in which much of the city centre was in a state of lockdown. Security concerns had prompted the authorities to discourage spectators. A pipe bomb had been found and defused overnight outside Dublin. In Phoenix Park stands the building which was once the home of the British viceroys who governed Ireland in the name of the Queen's ancestors. It is now the residence of Ireland's head of state, President Mary McAleese, and it was here that the president of a nation which fought the British crown greeted the current wearer of that crown as equals. An Irish military band played the British national anthem while a 21-gun salute was fired. In one part of the city centre, a group of about 100 Republicans were staging a protest against the visit. Police were there in force, a Union flag was burned, and the Irish police made it clear that this was a day when protests were not being tolerated at all. They swept through everyone who stood in their way. But in order to move on, obstacles from the past need to be neutralised. And to do that, the Queen went through empty and heavily protected streets to to the Garden of Remembrance to honour those who, prior to 1921, rose up against the British Crown to fight for Ireland's freedom. She laid a wreath and bowed her head in memory of the original Irish Republicans, the Fenian Brotherhood and the old IRA. This is a ceremony that every state visitor to Dublin performs. But for decades, it would have been quite unimaginable for a British monarch to come here and lay a wreath. This, though, was a day when the past was confounded and when old hatreds were eased. From the Garden of Remembrance, she left again, along O'Connell Street and past the General Post Office, again through streets where spectators had been discouraged.
Historic it may be, but the people of this city are really getting very little sense of this visit, other than a rather distant view of a very heavily guarded convoy. Within the safety of Trinity College, things could be relaxed a little. The Queen was finally able to meet some of the citizens of Dublin. The final engagement on a day which has been so many years in coming, when Britain and Ireland broke free from the past and treated each other with the mutual respect of neighbours and friends. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, Dublin.
Well, as Nick underlined there, this visit is meant to signal the full normalisation of relations between Britain and Ireland, a process which began intensively with the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, when Dublin dropped its claim on the counties of Northern Ireland and the peace process began in earnest. The past half-century, of course, has seen moments of real despair and terrible violence. One of those happened in 1979 in County Sligo, when the IRA murdered the Queen's cousin, Lord Mountbatten. Our Ireland correspondent, Mark Simpson, has been talking to the people of Sligo and gauging reaction to this royal visit.
Even some of the most beautiful parts of Ireland have painful memories. On a day when history is being made, it's impossible to avoid the past, including here in this quiet corner of the west of Ireland.
BBC Radio News. Lord Mountbatten of Burma has been killed by an explosion on his yacht off the west coast of the Irish Republic.
Lord Mountbatten used to visit the Irish Republic every year for family holidays. He came as a tourist, but the IRA regarded him as a target. For them, members of the British royal family were the enemy. But Mountbatten was popular here, and now that the troubles are finally over, there's overwhelming support for the visit to Ireland by the Queen. John Maxwell's son, Paul, was Lord Mountbatten's boat boy. He too was killed by the IRA bomb.
A huge number of people have suffered on both sides of the community here and in England. And, you know, if we're going to move forward at all, we should be welcoming this visit because it's a very positive thing.
It's that type of support which has made this historic visit possible. What happened here 32 years ago had a profound effect on members of the royal family. But the Queen will not be coming to this harbour as part of her 4-day visit. She wants to focus on the future rather than dwell on the past. In the nearby town of Sligo, the Queen's visit to Ireland is a big talking point.
I lived in England half my life, so I'm not anti-royalty or anything like that.
They kind of helped us out when we needed them help out with the bank bailouts and whatever else. They seem to stand up for us, so it's nice to return the compliment.
I don't really mind, to be honest. I think it's a positive thing, I suppose, because the whole Ireland-England going back, been a bit of bad blood, so I suppose it's a good thing.
The Queen's visit is all about mutual respect, looking forward, not back. But for Britain and Ireland, it's impossible to forget the past, and memories here fade slowly. Mark Simpson, BBC News, County Sligo.
Well, with me here at Dublin Castle this evening is our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell. Nick, it's day one of a 4-day visit. It's a significant visit, just in terms of its duration too, when we think about it. Have we already seen what will prove to be some of the most powerful images?
I'm quite sure we have. I think the scenes at the Garden of Remembrance today will live on and will be one of the enduring images of this visit. The sight of the Queen of Britain laying a wreath, bowing her head at a place which honours the heroes of republicanism up until 1921 was a very powerful one, and in the context of reconciliation between the two countries, a terribly important one. She did her duty there, and it's important to say that it's one of the obligatory steps that is taken by any state visitor here, just as any state visitor to London goes and lays a wreath at the grave of the unknown warrior at Westminster Abbey. So anyone here goes to the Garden of Remembrance. There will be more, I'm sure, enduring images tomorrow. She will be, of course, laying a wreath at the National War Memorial Gardens in memory of the 50,000 Irishmen who gave their lives in World War I. And, of course, she'll be going to Croke Park, where there was a massacre back in 1920 where 14 innocent people were killed by British soldiers. So more very potent, powerful images still to come, and particularly tomorrow.
Nick, thank you very much. Nicholas Mitchell there for us. We'll have more from Dublin later in the programme on this first day of the state visit. Now, George, it's back to you.
Hugh, thank you very much. In other news, the cost of living has jumped to its highest level in 2.5 years. The government's preferred measure of inflation, the Consumer Prices Index, rose by 0.5 point to 4.5% last month. That was higher than predicted.